Hello, everybody, and welcome back to General Geekery. And man, it looks like we're back on the air for a regular basis now because not only do we have a topic in mind for today, we have
Whoa,
a topic in mind for the next two shows already, possibly even three,
weird.
right? So, one of the upcoming shows, someone has well, okay, so everybody knows that I am in the process of collecting all of the specialty Vipers from the G.I. Joe line, from A Real American Hero all the way up to uh, Classified. And I'm getting pretty close. I recently completed getting all of the Alley Vipers, and somebody on my page posted saying I needed to take a group shot of all those Alley Vipers together. I'm like, yeah, and that's a great idea because I don't think I've ever seen one picture of all of the Alley Vipers together. And then I thought, I would take an individual picture of each one. And then I thought, you know what? I will do a special show on the YouTube channel and talk about each one. And then I thought, you know what? That'd be a perfect episode for General Geekery because JD and I, while we do like G.I. Joe, we have very different opinions on quite a few figures. That's definitely one of the things that we makes the show interesting is I mean, like yesterday, we got in a pretty heated argument about how cool the V1 Heat Viper is.
Okay, first of all, it's a heat viper, so it's not cool. Um,
Um,
secondly, that was a play on words, bub. Secondly, the heated argument was over text, so there it was some of it was, some of the energy wasn't quite where it was. Um, but the Heat Viper version 1 sucks.
no,
That
it does not.
helmet sucks.
No, it does not.
That helmet is fucking stupid.
Wrong.
I didn't like it when I was 9 years old. I don't like it when I'm 42.
Wrong.
I like the Fast Blast Viper because it was everything great about the Heat Viper minus that dumbass helmet.
Also
And
wrong.
Brian likes that helmet, and I simply don't understand. It's so terrible. It looks like
I'm working on a heat Fast Blast Viper with the V1 helmet.
no, no, no. Then it's just a stealthy Heat Viper, and that Heat Viper helmet looks like it was designed for the French fashion runway. It's terrible. It's awful.
I completely do
Anyways,
not agree with that.
um, we had a mini topic in mind first. Star Trek Lower Decks is a cartoon Star Trek show made by Star Trek fans for Star Trek fans, and I watched it from the beginning, but Brian has watched it recently, and I wanted his thoughts.
Yeah, not only did I watch it, I watched it at work while I was on duty, waiting for a call to drop, and then I'm like, you know what? I bet my wife would like this. So the last couple of weeks, we've been watching a couple episodes every night while I'm home, and we just finished up season 2 last night.
Um, so overall, what do you think?
I think it's fantastic. I love it.
Um,
Season 2 really got its legs underneath it, especially with some of the I won't say not just like guest stars, but like some of the esoteric guest stars, like Gomez in the season finale.
yeah.
I mean, I
Yes.
completely forgot about that. Emily pointed that out to me last night.
Yes. Because in that episode, she was newly promoted Captain Gomez, and anybody who's watched that episode, go all the way back to the beginning of TNG. And
Season
in
2,
season
episode
one,
16.
yeah, I was going to say in season one, there was an episode where she was like a clumsy, she was an ensign,
Season
but
2.
she was like a clumsy engineering assistant to Geordie LaForge.
Yep.
And they wrote the dialogue so it sounded like she was going to stick around for a while. And then the character disappeared, as happens often with episodic television. And And then they got the same actress back to play her as Captain Gomez in animation form.
Yeah, she was in season 2, episode 16. Q Hugh. Q Who. So
that took me a second. I'm like, wait, I know you got that wrong, but I couldn't figure out why.
I didn't.
Um,
We looked it up last night.
okay, so it was season 2. Yeah, because she was definitely written like she was going to be like a recurring character, and then wasn't.
Yeah.
A lot like there was a later episode called The Bonding, where there was an officer aboard the Enterprise that died, and her kid got orphaned, and
Yes.
she developed. There was some kind of like mentorship relationship that Worf had formed with him, and
Yeah.
it seemed like Worf was going to be there to help
We just watched that one.
take care of him, and then that kid just up and disappears.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I watched that one not too long ago too. And then there was, Emily said there's actually 2 episodes with Ensign Gomez in it.
Yeah, see, I thought so. Yeah, there is another one that's around the same time.
Yeah.
But yeah, Lower Decks, you're right. I loved it all the way through. It's definitely a show. I don't really think it. I think a casual Star Trek fan could watch it and enjoy it,
Yeah.
but I don't know
Die
how
Hard's
much.
going to get more out of it.
Yeah, the diehard fans, they're gonna see more of the in jokes and the references, and like
Appreciate
the occasional meta commentary on
yes
things in the Star Trek universe that fans outside of the universe have long made jokes about why like senior staff is the only people that you ever see in the conference room, and there's jokes about um, the they made a reference to uh one of the crew members called the original series TOS, and
yes.
the captain's like TOS, and they're like, yeah, that old ship. But of course, outside of the TV universe, fans call it TOS because it's the original series. It's what started it all.
Exactly.
But early on, when they were advertising Lower Decks before the first season started, they didn't quite know what to do with it.
Yeah,
It was
I did not watch it
co-created,
specifically based on those trailers. I'm like, that
and
was garbage.
I watched it because, see, for me, if you put Star Trek in the name, I'm gonna watch it. Um, Much like if you put GI Joe on the box, I'm gonna buy something from it.
Yeah.
But I'm
like that with Iron Man.
the creator of Lower Decks is the co-creator, I think, of Rick and Morty.
Yeah.
And early on, they didn't seem to know what to do with the marketing for Lower Decks. So the first 2 trailers they put out emphasized like the Rick and Morty comediness of it. But that's such a small part of the recipe that makes that show. I feel like those advertisements put people off, because even I was a little put off. Not enough to not watch it, because I was going to watch it no matter what. Because the worst that can happen is I could start watching a show from a franchise I love and decide, this one's not quite for me, and just I can stop with it. But I haven't, mind you. Every Star Trek show I've ever started, I somehow stick with it. Even when it's got problems, Picard.
Well, I still haven't seen season 3 yet.
No. I've come around on Picard because I rewatched the first season before the second season started, and it was much better, much less painful the second time through.
Okay.
But I watched Lower Decks from the beginning, and I thought it was hysterical. And I was recommending it to Brian because the funny thing is, I watch and like something about all the Star Treks, but at two of the Star Trek shows currently on the air are Lower Decks and Discovery. Whereas I could not possibly strongly recommend he watch Lower Decks enough. I can't possibly strongly recommend enough that he avoid Discovery,
which I have.
because he watches Enterprise but doesn't like it. And Discovery has all the same things about Enterprise that he doesn't like. Um, but it's set uh it's set in a different time period, and they forge some of their own trails. They make a lot of changes like Enterprise did. But um I know that all of his hangups with the Enterprise, with Star Trek Enterprise, he's going to have by watching Discovery. So uh I just recommended he not bother, because he's not going to like it. And um although Discovery has much better music, in your opinion, than the opening theme for Enterprise, which I love,
I
but
do not
Brian
have faith in the
loathes.
heart, man. I do not have faith in the heart.
I have all kinds of faith in the heart, and I love that song.
Seeing
Every once in a while,
every night here at home, there's a TV channel on here at the locally that shows an episode of TOS, TNG, DS9, Voyager, and then Enterprise. We usually skip. We always skip TOS because Emily watches um, Jeopardy, which is on at the same time. So she wants to watch Jeopardy, and that's fine because I've seen every episode of TOS probably 100 times, and I don't really want to see every episode 100 times more. But we do watch uh, the Next Generation, DS9, and Voyager. And when Enterprise comes on, I always say I do not have faith in the heart, and the dogs know that's bedtime and it's time to go outside and go potty and get their cookie. So when I say I don't have faith in the heart, dogs pop up and run towards the back door.
every once in a while on Facebook, I'll post a link on my own profile to that song, but I know because Brian will see it. And I'm just doing it to get a reaction because I love that song. I understand why a lot of fans hate it, but I happen to love it. But so Discovery does not have Faith of the Heart as a theme, but a lot of the same sentiment that they put behind Enterprise, expanding on the mythos, while doing like a visual reboot. Brian hates that quality.
Yeah,
He hates when shows that take place earlier in the continuity look much better than shit that takes place later in the continuity. Like
thing.
TOS, like Enterprise and Discovery look a million times better than TOS because of the technological limitations and budgetary limitations that TOS had at the time it was
Even
made.
TNG
And
these days.
yeah, but I don't mind that kind of stuff. I never get hung up on that kind of stuff. But that's
I
why I
also
kind of
don't like them changing like shoehorning shit in. So I mean, they changed all of the continuity. That's one of the reasons I hate the 2009 movies. On They changed all the continuity of some of my favorite stuff, and it's just fucking annoying. And then it's like they meet all of these huge races that take a huge portion of the story arcs, and it's like, okay, they didn't exist when they made TOS or TNG. So I mean, the Zindi. I mean, they that big of a thing should have been a thing that what they talked about later, but they didn't because they couldn't. And I hate it. It just bugs the fuck out of me.
I
What I want from Star Trek. I want a new Next Generation.
I don't I don't mind that kind of stuff. That stuff doesn't bother
I
me at
want
all.
something set 50, 100, 150 years after Picard. I want a new crew. I want a new ship. I want new storylines. Just not
Um,
far enough just ahead that maybe we can still have a little bleed over here and there. Like Scotty and McCoy and Spock appeared in TNG here and there. Just close enough that we can still have little cameos and still kind of talk about it in the past, but enough of its own thing where it's a new Star Trek, and it's not shoehorned in earlier in the canon.
Yeah, I don't. It never puts me off. It doesn't bother me at all when they introduce that kind of stuff. Well, the 2009, the JJ movies, they take place in a separate universe. There's one point where the timelines converge, and at a specific point, there's a separate universe that's created by the wormhole caused by the destruction of Romulus and Remus. Okay, so there's a whole separate thing. So they're not changing it. It's just set in a different universe. But I understand why it bugs you. Um, but Lower Decks avoids all of that. It takes place firmly in the prime timeline. It takes place uh shortly after, well, in a
Shortly after
relatively
Voyager gets
short
home
period of time after Voyager returns to the Alpha Quadrant
and
from,
before Picard,
yes. So, um, yeah, it takes place later in the continuity than,
which just proves my theory. It works. That's what we need. Something
um,
after TNG with new crew. Here it is. There it is. It works. It's fantastic. Yes, it's animated, but my theory is sound because this proves that it works.
well, the, the, um, well, and it's a new crew, new class of ship,
Yeah.
new, all of that. There's lots of references to the other shows.
Yeah.
There's characters that show up in weird places, like there's a statue of O'Brien. Um, Tom Paris shows up
There's
uh,
a
for
Quarks
an
on every
episode.
corner.
The what?
There's a Quarks bar on every
Oh
corner.
yeah, because Quark franchised his bar from Deep Space Nine. Um, the
They have a
and
little
then
model of DS9, and they're like, "Ooh, it comes with both a Jadzia and Ezri Dax."
yeah, see, I love that kind of stuff. In the trailer, in the in the trailer for Lower Decks season 3, we see Deep Space Nine, and the ship, the USS Cerritos, is flying around it. They're like, "Whoa, look at those pylons!" um, the but there's a lot of in jokes. There's a lot of, they carry over some of the spirit of the '70s Star Trek the animated series. To the point where um there's a reference to the animated series in Lower Deck season 2 in the episode where they all end up on like this collector ship, and it's really, like, if you really know some deep dive Star Trek trivia, I can't recommend Lower Decks highly enough.
Yeah, I do too.
Um
I'm not. I am definitely not as geeked out as JD on Star Trek to be able to appreciate 100% of those jokes, but
oh dude, there's stuff that I miss too. I'll see something on Facebook and be like, these are 10 Easter eggs. Like TrekCore is a Star Trek news website I go to a lot. And after episodes, they'll list different Easter eggs, and there's shit that even I missed. And some of this stuff that I'm like, what the fuck?
yeah,
But I'm just like, I didn't even, but I don't I don't think, if you've ever been put off by the commercials for Lower Decks with the comedic shock value stuff,
and
get
see,
past
I
it.
didn't. I didn't pick up any of that when I watched the
No,
first
because
trailer.
it's
Yeah, but
only,
and the only reason I watched it is because JD said that it's like Star Trek and Rick and Morty
yeah,
combined.
but,
Like I fucking love Rick and Morty.
and see, I don't. I'm not. I tried Rick and Morty, and after a few episodes, I'm just like, you know what? I see where the funny is, but a lot of times for cartoons, I don't always have the patience for it. Like, I'd just rather watch something live action sometimes,
Some of
even
them
if
are
it's
dark as
something,
fuck too, man.
huh?
Some of those episodes of Rick and Morty are dark as fuck too, man.
No, I know. I just,
So I mean, sometimes you got to be in the mood for that too, because it
it,
is.
well, yeah, and
It's
sometimes I'm not, but I tend to have a little bit more give when it comes to a franchise that I'm already devoted to, like Star Trek,
mhm.
um, or um, like what if for the Marvel stuff.
Yeah.
But I I'm glad that you like Lower Decks, and I'm glad that you were watching it. I So Emily's enjoying it too then?
Yeah, absolutely. She was
Good.
laughing her ass off the whole episode. Or
I Yeah, I mean,
but she's a big Star Trek fan too. I mean, that's definitely one of the reasons we hooked up. Is I'm like, what do you think about Star Trek? She's like, I love it. I'm like, sweet. So
um
yeah, no, she's enjoyed every episode. When does
yeah,
season three start?
uh
When does season three start? It's soon.
it just started last week.
Okay.
Um they're one episode into it. The new episode is out today, but I haven't watched it.
See, I don't have
But
CBS Prime. I have to get mine.
I get mine through Amazon. You can get a discount for the Paramount Plus subscription through Amazon.
Okay.
Because I had CBS All Access back before Star Trek Discovery
Yeah,
launched.
that's what I thought.
I got it because way back then, that was the only place to watch NCIS because it wasn't on Netflix yet. So
Yeah.
I started getting it for that. But then I was watching it for Discovery, and then when CBS All Access became Paramount Plus, or my CBS All Access was also through Amazon because the CBS All Access app was garbage. So I went through the Amazon part of it because the app was more mobile friendly.
Gotcha.
Um, and then once All Access became Discovery Plus, it just sort of rolled into it. So that's how I watch it. That's how I watch SEAL Team too. Same thing.
Geez, I have not gotten back to that. I'm halfway through season two still.
Um, I I'm
So
halfway through season 4, but I watched all 4. I watched all 3.5 seasons I got into in the span of a month, and I burned myself out on it.
yeah,
Um,
that's kind of
it
what I
was
was doing, watching it at work.
yeah, I was watching it a lot, and it was condensed too much into one spot. And I put it back on a couple weeks ago. And I'm just like, nah, still not ready for it yet.
That's kind of where
But
I'm at.
um, but yeah, I wanted to talk about Lower because I know you had told me that you were watching it in a text, but we hadn't discussed it,
Right.
and so
And with that, we're gonna segue into our next part of our show, which is us restarting it because we don't have Zoom, and our meeting's going to end in 5 minutes. So I'm going to end this.
All right,
So the next part of the show we had planned on doing, I mean, we had everything planned out. This is weird. This is a first for us, I think. Is we were going to each open a figure on the show, like they did on Articulated Chad's show, and we did on our last show. JD was going to open the classified Major Blood that I got in.
I have one, thanks to Brian. He found one at a convention for me and sent it to me because until I got it the other day, this figure did not yet exist. Now it does because I have one. I never saw one at the store.
No,
Never saw even a trace of it. Never saw. It wasn't even one of those things um, where it. I saw like an empty case in the like it had been there.
Yeah.
No, it's almost like that my Target just simply never got them.
Yeah,
They
it's
just
the same way with Fire. Well, actually, Major Blood too. Firefly and Major Blood. I never saw those at Target at all. I had to get those. I think I traded my fridge figure for it. For my.
and I never saw Firefly either, but he was one I needed. But yeah, I finally got Major Blood, so I'm gonna open it on the show because when we were on the show with James and Chad, yeah, it started a trend with us. We want to open shows, open our toys on the show.
So the figure that I was going to open is the classified bat. However, I don't think JD was aware of what I was prepared to open for the show. So I'm going to give him the choice of stick with the classified bat, or I'm going to open my guillotine.
It's guillotine.
Guillotine,
It's
whatever.
French. But yes, it's like all French words. There's 16 letters and they only pronounce 8 of them.
Yes.
But open guillotine.
Yeah, see, that's what I thought. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
never
like,
mind some battle android trooper nonsense. Open guillotine.
yeah, I thought that would I thought you might change your tune when you saw that I was prepared to open one of my favorite all-time favorite characters.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily one of my favorite figures. I prefer my custom to even this one, but the character, the backstory behind it is just absolutely fantastic.
He likes that character so much. I made an O-ring version of it.
Yeah, it was for our first customizing challenge,
Yeah.
which we're talking about maybe doing again this year because we so far we've had 2 in a row, so we've had one every year. Um, but things kind of went sideways this year, so we're still kind of debating whether or not we're going to do it this year or not. So yeah, let's let JD do his first.
All right. Major Blood's out. I'm not taking his missiles out yet because you know what? Frankly, I'm gonna have to put them somewhere so I can't lose them, and so I'm just
But
gonna leave them in
I
there
think
right
they
now.
attach to something, so you don't have to.
Do they? Okay.
Yeah, one
Um.
attaches to the gun, and I think the other one attaches to a. I'm just
Oh.
sure it attaches to something.
Oh, like his original. Oh. Oh. You know what? The backpack probably holds them.
Yeah.
It's like his because the original Major Blood had the backpack with the sculpted missiles in.
Yes.
So. Oh yeah. Okay. All right. Um. Yeah, because I was a kid that frequently had lost accessories when I was a kid. Like, I'd open the package and swear to God, if the vintage figure included more than like 3 accessories and any of them were small, I was gonna lose it. I didn't care. It that never affected my play pattern at all. Things just got lost. Some of the things I lost those after I forgot they existed until later when I looked at Yojo and I'm like, hey, I don't remember that accessory. It was probably in the rug somewhere. But yeah, okay. They store in the backpack. Not that well, but they do. They store in the backpack. Good. Um,
Pull it up so
wow.
we can see it. There you go.
What the back or the
Not the whole figure. I mean, that's the whole point of opening these things to have a look at the bastard.
this is phenomenal.
Oh yeah, no, I think this is. I was not a big proponent of the classified figures when they came out, just because I am a true diehard 1/18 scale fan. I mean, I didn't get figures as a kid that were cool because they weren't in the same scale as my GI Joe and Star Wars figures. So I'm like, yeah, it's a nice figure, but I don't want it because it won't play well with my other stuff. It's pretty much all I customize. I've done count them, 2 6-inch customs out of the hundreds that I've done. I've done 2, and the only 6-inch stuff that I do collect on a regular basis is, of course, Iron Man stuff.
I'm glad that this definitively answers the question about the arm.
Yeah, that's definitely a
Uh,
cybernetic arm.
yeah. I mean,
But Major Blood's is one of my probably my favorite Cobra character, and
well,
I think this is the definitive figure of Major
yeah,
Blood.
well, he's been a mutual favorite of ours. Um, like he's always been like he's the Cobra that we share in our favorites list, and I like quite a few of the previous figures that have come out of him, but
Yeah,
they've never.
they've never caught it quite as DTC came probably the closest, and I really like the 2003 Python Patrol version too. Uh,
But
but yeah, nothing really. That is one thing I will give the 6-inch figures is you can cram way more detail into a 6-inch figure than you can a 1/18 scale figure. Um, and this is just a phenomenal figure.
the
The head sculpt's amazing. The
I was
cybernetic
gonna say the grizzled war veteran is really captured here in a way that none of the smaller figures have ever been able to get. Because for the most part, like he's always had the mustache, he's always had a helmet, but he's always looked very
Clean.
clean. Yeah, clean. Exactly. And here, no, dude, this guy, he's seen some shit.
Yeah.
Like he has, and he's got the scars where the eye covering is, which none of the previous versions did.
Nope.
Um,
DTC might have had one. I've got the DTC head here. Let me check.
oh, it might have, but
I want to say that it does have a scar. I know I've got a copy of it
it's
here.
certainly not.
I do have
It's
a
certainly
copy of
not
it
as
right
obvious as it is here. Um, but I mean, the sneer on his face, the like this like this look on his face that said,
It does not have a scar,
ah, see,
but it
yeah,
has a really good sneer on it that I like. So,
yeah, it's
and it's
like
the
he's
head
got
that I
this
use for my custom.
yeah, this look on his face that said, I've done a lot of bad things, but I've done them very well. Don't
Yes.
mess with me.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely. I really, really dig this. Like I said, I'm not the biggest proponent of the 6-inch figures, but yeah, man, some of these they've worn me down over time just because how awesome they are, and
they
Naked Blood is definitely on that list of.
they you know, I've never really cared one way or the other for the debate about is it an armored arm or is it a cybernetic? It's fine either way. I don't.
Yeah,
I always like the idea that it was a prosthetic, but it's never been emphasized the way it is here because a lot of Major Blood figures after the very first one, the initial one, just ignored it altogether.
they did. That's
This,
very true.
yeah,
I did
the
not in my custom. I went with cybernetic arm on my custom.
yeah, but like the Supersonic Major Blood ignored it.
You ignored it.
The yeah, I mean they've never.
I really would have liked to
Uh,
see Major Blood come out in the Pursuit of Cobra line. I would have really liked to see how they could have reimagined that.
I
This
think
is what I imagine would have come out in the Pursuit of Cobra line if it had, the classified figure is what I imagine what we would have gotten if they'd have done it as a Pursuit of Cobra figure.
well, yeah, because if you look at it, the amount of character that they gave to guys like
Wakanda.
Ricondo and um um
Low light, even I mean even low lights. There's more character in that figure, I think, than the original.
no, there is definitely. But
Lifeline.
Lifeline was just a great update of that shitty original figure. Um,
See, and I have a theory on that. Why because that's what flight suits look like, man. So I think it's supposed to be a flight suit. And dude, having
the
worn a flight suit as an emergency medical provider, they suck ass and they do not look good except on hot nurses.
yeah, I can see
Why
it.
that
I
figure
mean, it's still
look
a bright red ass figure.
my
Um,
flight suit was like half bright red. I'm like, holy fuck, I am lifeline.
all right, see,
I got lucky and had a decent flight suit. My flight suit was half red and half like really dark, almost black blue. But my flight suit in when I was in South America, bright fucking orange.
see, and I had no real world experience with such a thing, so I can't speak to that. Lifeline
Yeah,
always just seemed
nobody
to be
wears a flight suit well except for a hot nurse, man. I don't know what
um
it is, but I looked like shit in a flight suit. All my friends look like shit in a flight suit. You put a hot nurse in a flight suit,
well, I mean that can be said for a lot of uniforms, I imagine. But I don't Lifeline always just seemed to be a weird design choice for me. And the Pursuit of Cobra version was that again, but more detailed. Um Airtight, perfect example.
yes.
Law had a lot of character. The only thing in Pursuit of Cobra Anniversary Law didn't have was the Kirk Bazzigian face sculpt, but otherwise, had a lot of character that the original didn't have. But you're right. If we'd gotten the Pursuit of Cobra Major Blood, it would have been a 4-inch version of something very akin to this. I
I think
think
so too.
this is this is a phenomenal figure.
Yeah.
I think this is. I've got a few favorites in the classified line, but he's already. I've had him in hand and out of the box for 10 minutes. He's already he's already near the top of my list. Um, he comes with a great 1/12th update to his original hand cannon.
The rockets fit on that too.
Um, Look at that.
Yeah.
Huh. Interesting. All right, cool. I and then he's got this hammer
Oh
jammer.
yeah, that thing is awesome. That reminds me of I can't think of the name of the pistol that Hellboy uses.
Oh, yeah, neither. Well, I have no idea what its name is, but yeah, reminds me of that. It looks like it looks like if you shot somebody with this, it would it would disintegrate. It would be less of an exit wound and more of just a spot where there used to be biological matter and there no longer is.
The Good Samaritan is the name of the gun. The Samaritan.
Well, I never in a million years would have had any idea about that. And he comes with a holster to stash it in.
Yep.
So,
Is a huge bonus for me because I like my figures with a lot of gear and I like my figures to be able to hold all the gear. That's how I didn't lose my gear as a kid is because anything that my figure couldn't hold, I put somewhere else so I wouldn't lose it. And then yeah, all my figures held their gear.
well, I had a tendency to take my stuff outside too.
Ah,
So there were a lot of hair scrapes and a lot of helmets and stuff that, you know, but, and of course, he's got his characteristic dog tags,
yes.
Major Blood has, and they're removable. I might end up putting a dab of super glue just so they stay in place.
Yeah, they don't
Because
sit very well. That's kind
yeah,
of
because well, I mean they're plastic, so they just float around a little bit. The belts do too. I tend to put a dab of super glue where the belt under the belt buckle so the belts don't float too. But I mean, it's just a limitation of how they're making these,
yeah.
and it's a matter of
Yeah, you're not really going to get around some of that stuff
no,
unless it's sculpted
and
on, and I would prefer not to be sculpted on.
exactly. Otherwise, it's not removable. It's a matter of them making a choice between have it be a removable accessory or have it be a dedicated accessory or as part of the sculpt. And yeah, I'd rather have it
And see, there's
removable.
a really
If
cool piece of fan art that I used for my um, Major Blood custom. I ended up going back and recarding it on a vintage style card, but it's him holding his fistful of dog tags hanging off.
oh sweet,
Yeah, and you totally can recreate that now because his dog tags are removable. And that's the first one that they've been. I think that's the first one they had removable.
no, the 25th version had
That's
the
right.
removable dog tags, but that was just about the only thing the 25th version did right. Otherwise, the
Oh man,
25th Major Blood was hot garbage.
Alice is
So
laying at my feet and she's asleep, and when she sleeps, she farts. Oh my god, that dog's ass is horrid.
there we go.
Yes, exactly like that. And he looks pretty good with the helmet on too. And I had a hard times like helmet or no helmet because he looks awesome both ways.
And yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, no, I freaking love that figure. The only
This is
classified figure that I like better is the Alley Viper.
um I think yeah, this is this one it's up there with Spirit and Scarlet and uh um that officer as one of my favorites now. Um
All good choices.
yeah, the um
Yeah, I'll have
oh
to
yeah,
send you that piece of art.
see this.
Yeah.
That peg is long enough, the way it's sculpted to actually sit right. That is my one drawback with Spirit. Is the peg? I feel like it's just a tad, like just enough too short to not sit quite properly
Huh.
in the hole on his back. So
I'll have to look at mine. I don't think I had any
it
problems with
falls
mine.
off. A couple times it fell off because once I put Freedom on the post on the backpack, um, he leaned back and the backpack got it didn't fall out, but it got wobbly. This backpack fits properly. The um, I'm not I'm not a huge proponent of because sometimes like Pursuit of Cobra, they'd have like these real long backpack so they also weren't sitting right
Because it stick
because
out
they
too
were
far.
then they were floaty on the bed. But no, they did this just right. This is definitively the best. This is by far the best Major Blood they've ever made. They can't top this. They can repaint it. They can do other versions of Major Blood. They will never top this for capturing the character the way we see him in our heads.
Yeah. So I mean, when I review a figure, I talk about three things. I talk about the packaging, the playability, and the customizability. The packaging on this is really nice. The artwork on the box is fantastic. There's a the 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 inset of the box with the logo of the Terrordrome on the back is just phenomenal. I love that piece of art. I would have a poster of that somewhere if they made it. Um, the playability is definitely off the charts with for the reasons that we've been talking about. The missile attaching to the rocket pistol, the missiles attaching to the backpack fitting perfectly on the back, the dog tags being removable, the helmet being removable. Like I said, I had a hard time deciding, do I want to leave the helmet on or do I want to take it off, because the headset
Oh,
is fantastic. That it
oh, there's a peg on the rocket launch that I wondered about.
yeah,
There's a hole
yes.
in the backpack.
Yep.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah,
All
so
right.
he doesn't have to hold any of his weapons. They all, yeah.
All
Uh,
right, yeah, that's cool.
and
I'm
the
not.
cybernetic arm, customizability, man, I don't know what I would do to this.
I
If
was gonna say there's nothing I would do to improve it,
I think
and
if somebody gave me one and said you have to customize this, what I would do is I would do the 2003 Python Patrol color scheme, just because I'm not like everybody knows I'm not the biggest Python Patrol fan, but the 2003 set is all of the awesome, and that Major Blood is a good Major Blood as well, and that that is what I would do with one. If somebody's like, you have to make something with this, that's what I would do. Otherwise, there is nothing that needs to be customized. All of the
I
accessories fit perfectly. There's nothing that needs to be customized to make this work.
I have a tendency with figures I buy to do tweaks or
Yeah.
just what I call fixes, even if they're not flaws. It's just it might be one or two things that just really bug me, and I have to change it. I have
We
to
were
do
talking about
something
that the
about it.
other day with the Data Vipers.
Yeah, yeah. Because I have two of them. One of which has the gear all glued on, and one of which has the gear that I can take off. But I don't. I just leave it as is. But um, like I mentioned, Classified Scarlet. She's my favorite version of Scarlet ever, and she is one of my favorite classified figures. But even then, I added water slide decals
Uh,
for. I put an American flag on her shoulder, and on her gauntlet, I put the Arashikage symbol. So to tie her in with the Ninja Clan, but I didn't really have to make any other changes because I thought and I glued her belt down because again it was all floaty
right.
floppy. But um I don't even Zartan. I mean, which I haven't
Did you ever
gotten the
get your?
master,
Did you ever get
not
the?
yet, but they sent it from Singapore. I can't track it, so it could be here tomorrow. It could be here next week. I don't know. When we talked about it on the show last time, I had just bought it, just gotten the shipping notice. So, I mean, estimated delivery date isn't even until like September 9th. So, but I do think that it's going to displace Zartan as one of the best class. Not my favorite classified figures. There's a few things I wish they'd done differently,
Yeah.
but it is one of the best. But even then, there were like two tweaks that I made. There's nothing for me to tweak.
No. I
This
think.
Major Blood is perfect.
Yeah. I
There's
was
no,
just gonna say, to me, this is what I would consider a perfect action figure. The
yeah,
packaging is
I'm,
fantastic.
I'm
The playability is amazing. Everything
no,
fits the way it's supposed to, and
I'm
there's just nothing to do with it.
no, there's nothing for me to fix. There's nothing that's gonna bug me that I have to nitpick. There's nothing that I'm gonna be like, no, no. It's very rare for me to hold a figure straight out of the package that I feel like is perfect, but this one is.
Yeah. All right, my turn. All right, so I am opening the figure subscription service Guillotine, who is the Cobra Eels leader and a former Navy SEAL. So, I mean, he falls squarely within my wheelhouse of favorite Cobras and obviously the SEALs.
I had the version from the DTC box set, but I don't have the figure subscription service update.
I had that figure, and I'm sure I have long since customized it because I know that particular weapon, the skull sword, went to my um, second range Viper Omega has that, and I'm just cutting the blister off this because I figure somebody will want the file card, so I'm not destroying the backing because I figure somebody will want this file card, and I'm more than happy to give that to somebody who collects file cards, which is not me. Got the figures.
On this file card, does he have a? Did the club give him a file name, or is it like, huh?
I was just gonna look at that. Nope, classified still.
Hate that. Drives me
I
nuts.
kind of dig it on this particular figure because it kind of lends credence to the fact that this guy was a former Navy SEAL, and they don't want anybody knowing that.
I'm a fan of if it's not a real name, a pseudonym at least. The unknown and the classified file names drive me nuts. In my
And I
in my
just
personal
realized
headcanon,
while I was working on my Dr. Mindbender custom that they never gave his name either.
no.
I did not know that.
In my personal headcanon, all the Joes and Cobras that don't have names on their file cards, they all have names in my head, including Snake Eyes. Although I don't think I ever gave one the full name to Dr. Mindbender because I don't care that much. Although I no, I take that back. When he was a orthodontist, he was Dr. Miller, but because I wanted it to be, he only twisted it a bit to make it Dr. Mindbender. But
All right, so
yeah,
here.
I just wondered if they'd given Guillotine a real identity.
No. So here is the figure subscription service Guillotine.
All right, so
The backpack that came with the 50th anniversary torpedo. Lower legs are those are the Cobra Trooper legs, the really nice Cobra Trooper legs. Forearms, I think, are Storm Shadow, and then the torso is just that like sweater vest torso, and then that's a new head sculpt. The mask is the one that came with the DTC figures JD was talking about. It comes with the Scar rifle that comes with a bunch of figures. This particular weapon, I don't think I've seen that one before in any. I don't have a copy of that in anything.
Neither do I. I don't recognize it either.
So that's a new weapon, which is kind of cool. And then, of course, he comes with the skull and spine handled.
All
Uh,
right, so
and
yeah, so they did give him that from the DTC box set.
yeah,
Um,
the hoses from the helmet don't plug into anything, so you just got to kind of pretend that they're plugged in.
I don't think the original did either from the box set. I
Oh yeah,
don't.
it did. They plugged into something.
Did he have a back? Okay, I don't remember. It's been a while since I don't have any of those figures anymore. Used to, don't anymore. But uh, I don't remember if he came with a backpack or not.
I'm pretty sure they did. I'm pretty sure they plugged into something. I'm just sure. I don't remember what off the top of my head, but I'm just sure that they plugged into something.
Is this guillotine? Did they do the plague tie-in, or is he just the eels commander?
I think it's just the Eels commander. I'll look at the file card here in a second.
Because I like that they went back and they made the eels commander version.
Yeah, I do too, and that's what I prefer. I didn't wasn't really into the comic books at the time when the Plague Troopers came out. And I
But
had the Plague Trooper set, but
I had the plague trooper set, but once
no, no reference to the Plague Troopers at all on the
oh, okay. Yeah, by the time the plague was brought into the comic book mythos, I had stopped reading. Um, there were some issues before that that put me off, and I couldn't keep up with it. My comic store wasn't getting it, so it was going to be so. But they reimagined what they did with the plague, which is okay. That's fine.
yeah.
I just I I just I didn't have the patience for it to I didn't have enough give a shit to jump through the hoops to try to get it, especially after it had already annoyed me. So I just let it go.
Yeah, same here.
And
That's
then shortly after that, they lost the life.
stuff that you can't fluff the carpet. Go lay on the sheepskins if you want something to fluff.
Yeah, that guillotine, that's cool. And if
Uh,
I
so packaging through things I always reviewed. Packaging's pretty cool. It's got definitely has decent art on the front, decent art on the back, and has a really detailed file card. So definitely a big plus on the packaging. Playability. He's got lots of weapons. Again, I've got one more gun than he can hold, so that's kind of a detractor for me. He also does come with the pistol with the silencer. So that was like the Cobra Trooper and Snake Eyes legs, and he does come with both. A lot of those figures that have that particular item sculpted on or come with that weapon don't come with the silencer. They just come with that pistol. So that's kind of a pain in the ass. Um, Again, the helmet doesn't plug into anything, which could have been fixed by two little holes drilled in the backpack. But
that's what the Dremel's for.
yeah, so the customizability is definitely there. There's definitely some improvements, some little fixes like JD was talking about that could be made with this figure. Um, and you could give him eel gear. Um, you could do a lot of stuff just like straight out of the package without like sculpting or without heavy modification, which I think would be pretty cool. Given the 25th anniversary eel neck plate and an eel helmet, or yeah, you can do anything with this. My version, I did an ultimate version, so he had a whole bunch of gear. He had dive gear. I think he had Halo gear. Um, so yeah, there's a lot you can do with this figure. I'd like to get that sword cast up. So if somebody's watching this and wants to cast that sword, that would be a big benefit to the community because those swords, you can't get those. They're
No, because back when I for our first customizing challenge, when I did the O-ring version,
yeah,
that was one of the things was I wanted to give him his trademark sword. But um there weren't a lot of the DTC ones available on eBay. And some of the ones that were just loose, so they didn't have the sword. The complete ones were pretty expensive. If it was 2020, quarantine was well into effect, and the secondary market was already rising on that. So I couldn't, but it wasn't widely available. The DTC
Oh,
one wasn't.
it was
There
a
weren't.
Toys R Us exclusive.
Right, but on eBay there were only a few of them.
Yeah.
Like I said, a couple of them were just the figure itself, so didn't have the helmet, um didn't have the sword, and the vast majority of what was available was the figure subscription service. But loose or carded, it didn't matter. They were all out of this
Stupid
world
expensive.
pricing,
Yeah.
and nothing that I was gonna do, nothing I was gonna get just for a sword to put with the custom that I was making. And I imagine that that hasn't changed at all for the figure subscription service version, because most of those figures are prohibitively priced,
Yeah.
still, and were all along, and will continue to be.
Yeah.
But yeah, back when I was making that custom, there weren't that many of those. So, and the swords, I think there was one listing that had the sword and the helmet by themselves, but they were priced by it now for as much as I would have paid for the figure by itself.
Right.
Or like a complete, yeah, something. It was like, I want to say, I think the cheapest I could find the figure with the gear or without the gear was like 27.
Okay.
But he didn't have the sword, he'd just have the helmet. So
Right.
if somebody has not already casted that sword,
I don't
I do
think they
feel like
have it.
somebody
I haven't
should.
seen it anywhere. But that doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't mean it's not out there. But if anybody's caster is a caster and is watching the show and wants to make a copy of that sword, give me a shout and I will send that to you as long as you send it back. So with that, we're gonna pause it right here and restart the meeting because we're out of time once again, and move into the next segment of our show. So, all right. So the next part of the show that we had planned, um, if you have been following General Geekery for any length of time, you know that we have pretty much gone over the entire line of GI Joe toys from a Real American Hero all the way to I think we got as far as Pursuit of Cobra, and reviewed figures from every year. And somehow, I don't know how, we missed the Real American Hero collection, which is the line of toys that came out in 2 packs between the original Real American Hero line, which ended in '94, and when I think Joe versus Cobra was the first new sculpt figures. And those
Yeah.
came out 90. I don't remember what year those started coming
What,
out.
Joe versus Cobra? Oh, well, that was launched in 2002.
2002. Yeah, yeah. So that's
Yeah, the
2000.
Real American Hero collection was for 97 and 98. GI Joe was exclusive to Toys R Us. In late 2000, GI Joe was introduced back into the mass market with these 2 packs, as a placeholder while they engineered the new system that would become Joe versus Cobra, that they would also re-engineer shortly after there. But
Valve versus Venom.
it was started with themed 2 packs or similarly colored 2 packs. A lot of times it was whatever molds or tooling that they had on hand.
Yeah, I don't think there are any original sculpts in this line. It's all repaints, and man, as much as I give Hasbro shit for repainting figures, I am hands off with giving them shit on this line because it is fantastic.
There were a bunch of new head sculpts, but everything else was reused. Um, a lot of there's a lot of parts duplication between them, but they were really using some of the parts that they had reused. Or you know what, the 97 line was exclusive line was filled with figures that they didn't have the figures they wanted to use, so they had a lot of weird substitutes. The 98 line was a lot closer to a lot of those figures had their proper identities, but again, sometimes shoddy parts usage where this was a lot of parts. There were very few figures with eye-catching colors. It was a lot of realistic browns and greens and tactical looking. There was some parts reusage in between releases in the same, but again, they were using the tooling that they had on hand. And a lot of times there were a lot of brand new characters that were released.
Yeah.
Some of those were due to lost copyrights, lost trademarks.
Yeah.
And some of those weren't. Some of them were just characters that they created as tributes to actual people. The file cards all had the disclaimer that this name does not represent any known living human being or person, when they in fact absolutely did represent known living human beings. A lot of names were tributes to people. The Steel Brigade fan club at the time, which later became Master Collector, which became the GI Joe Collectors Club. A lot of those guys wrote the file cards, so a lot of those Joe's file names are people that later ran the club. But they had one of the things that I love when they launch a GI Joe line or within the GI is new blood, new characters, obscure characters, tiny one-off characters. I don't care. I love when there's brand new characters added because it adds character variety. Because one of the things I'm not really a big fan of, and they've relaunched the Joe line a couple of times and they did it in the movies. I don't like having a small group of core Joe characters that all specialize in 8 different things.
Right.
Give me a team of 20 guys.
Yes.
That all have their own. The original Real American Hero line, the original 13 Joes, they all had dual specialties, but that's because it was brand new. It was starting. They didn't have
They didn't have a pilot. They didn't have a helicopter pilot. They didn't have a
Stalker was the Ranger, but he was also the team medic.
Right.
Rock and Roll was the heavy machine gunner, but he was also the PT instructor.
Yes.
Flash was the laser trooper, but he was also the electronics repair guy.
Was he the pilot too? Or was that Zap?
That was no, because Zap was explosives disposal, along with Bazooka Trooper.
Breaker. I don't remember. I know one of them was like sort of a pilot.
Yeah, I think it was Grand Slam. But again, it was a small team with a limited roster.
Right.
Once the line came back in 80 or expanded in 83, there were new characters everywhere. And most every year of the original line, there would be new characters. Sometimes their specialties would replace older characters, and sometimes it would just be extra characters. 1990 was the first line.
Older ones too.
Right. But I mean, like they would have Bazooka and Zap as Bazooka, as, anti-tank guys, but, or Footloose and Grunt as the infantry soldiers.
Yeah.
1990 was the first year where it was all new Joes and all new Cobras with no repeats. Most of those characters ended up being one-offs that didn't get updates later versions, but a lot of times when the lines would come out, they would just reintroduce classic characters, core characters. G.I. Joe Renegades cartoon was a great cartoon, but with a small Joe team, drove me nuts. The Retaliation.
Major Blood first thing in that. That's like, man, I don't know. And I never watched it after that.
Yeah, they don't. yeah, I don't. A lot of times, the new cartoons that they come in, they don't quite know what to do with it. Like they'll have an interesting thing, but then they'll sort of fumble it somehow.
Right?
Um, the live action movies would do that too. It would just be this tiny team of Joes. Give me character variety. The Real American Hero collection was filled with brand new characters.
Yes,
Um,
absolutely. And
um,
what of course what JD is definitely the GI Joe fan, and I am clearly the Cobra fan. And there are fantastic Cobras in this line. The Major Blood in this is one of the best sculpts. Um, Chameleon, which is a repaint of a very nice repaint of the Baroness is in there. The Rock Viper version 2, which they must have lost the trademark for Range Viper because it's just a recolored Range Viper. I don't know what it is about that figure, but I absolutely love that figure. I have 4 of those for some reason.
at at the time that those figures were in stores and in numbers, the first series, which included the 2-pack with Major Blood and the Rock Viper, I had 8 of those.
Yeah, I don't doubt it. I
Um,
would have 8 if I could. Uh,
I don't.
there's a really nice undertow in the blue and the gray. There's a repaint of the lamprey in a muted silver and a kind of a muted blue, which is really cool. And of course, if I'm not mistaken, Rip It came out, which is JD's
Yes.
one of JD's favorite characters.
Um.
And this is just 2000 we're talking about because this
Yeah.
line went on for 2000 and 2001. We'll talk about 2001 here in a minute.
There was there was one last series at the beginning of 2002, but they were exclusives and they were a
Oh
short
yeah,
run.
we'll talk about that in a minute. Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
I
was
want
a
to.
short run,
One pack
and
in particular I want to talk about in that
yeah, good luck on those.
because
Good
I've
luck getting
I've
those.
had to look for one of those particular figures, and it was a bitch to get one because
Um,
of the figure it came with, and on top of being an internet exclusive.
in the 2000 collection, I remember there was one of the toy magazines at the time. I don't know if it was Wizards Toy Fair or something. One of the toy magazines I bought had pictures of the Real American Hero collection, that first lineup. And I was at work when I opened the magazine up because I brought it with me for my lunch. And I was really excited because to see some of the molds that they had dug up, like Big Ben, they had
Yeah, that is a
located
very
it.
nice big Ben.
Um, Duke version 3, they had just uncovered that mold. Um, Supersonic Major Blood was going to be in the classic Major Blood colors.
Yes,
Um,
I love that figure. I don't think I have one, but I love that figure.
um, yeah, Big Ben was done in like an Arctic get up, which we hadn't seen.
Yeah,
Um, him and his pack mate, Whiteout, um, had Adventure Team logos on their sleeves.
did that? I didn't
Um,
notice that.
yeah, it was done as a nod to the GI Joe Adventure Team of the 70s. Um, there were a lot of really small touches that were there to show, some connection to the history of the line. Um, Whiteout was a straight up repaint, top to bottom, of Snow Job.
Yeah,
But for one, they didn't have a trademark for Snow Job. And for two, they named him Whiteout because he was named after Lenny J. Lee III, who was, in, yeah, he's in Lee's Action Figure News and Toy Review,
yeah.
the collector magazine at the time. He was the owner of that magazine, so it was done as a tribute to him. So again, the little file card disclaimer: Lenny J. Lee does not represent any known living human being. Yes, it does.
Yes.
But they did that with a bunch of characters. where they gave them new file names, or they were brand new characters.
Yes.
Sidetrack, Double Blast, Crossfire, Chameleon. They were all new characters using old molds, and in some cases they had new head sculpts. Whiteout didn't, Double Blast didn't. They both used Snow Job and Roadblocks heads. I do wish they'd been giving new heads too, because it would have added a lot of individuality. But that kind of stuff didn't bother me. They struck a chord with me. All of these brand new characters, they struck a chord. They really resonated with me. And as a group, to this day, I'm still a big fan of what they tried to do.
As am
Almost
I, for
no,
the same reasons of, these are, I don't army build per se as much as I get one of each individual figure and it becomes an army in and of itself. And I mean, you should see the deck of my flag. There's very few like doubles on that, and it's pretty much straight just Cobras. I still have some Joes on there. It's just because I haven't found a place to move them to yet. But I loved it for the exact same reason that, like, here are really cool army builders. Like I said, I don't know what it is about that Rock Viper version 2 that's a repaint of the Range Viper, but I fucking love that figure. And like I
it's
said, I have
great.
4 of them.
It's
And
great.
I
It's
don't
in
have 4 of any figure except probably the Pursuit of Cobra LA Viper. Oh,
yeah,
and I
it's
do have 4 of the Imperial Guard, but I mean they came 4 in a set. So I mean, if I'd have bought a set, I'd have had 4.
right.
I don't know. To me, that doesn't really count.
They because they repainted the Range Viper in this really dark gray blue color with some red highlights, and the skull mask was white.
Yeah, it had a
And
little wash to it too.
yeah, I was gonna say, and a lot of those figures had like a paint wash that they had never done in GI Joe before.
Right.
Gave it a little bit more depth to some of the. But then they did some weird things, like they gave Firefly like a woodland camo get up.
Just gonna
It was
mention
it was the marbleized plastic, so it had green and brown alternating but Firefly had never been done in woodland camo.
the Ambush is a real nice figure from that too.
Yeah.
That was Sidetrack though.
Right. But it was Ambush from head to toe.
Yeah.
But he had a different file name. It was Sean C. McLaughlin. But again, I didn't have a problem seeing him as I didn't see him as not Ambush, because his hair color was different, his deco was different, and at the time I hadn't had an Ambush figure in a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never really had a problem seeing reused heads as different guys, as long as they're different.
enough. Yeah, and see, I mean, for customizing, I have to do that. There's a like a Marauder, the Marauder head, the female head with the sunglasses. Dude, I've used that head probably in 4 different customs, and I've had to repaint, make sure that I use different hair color each time, because otherwise it just doesn't work.
Yeah, because like Whiteout, like I said, he's Snow Job top to bottom, but they gave him a dark brown beard, so he didn't look like Snow Job.
No.
The they there was a lot of they're obscure characters now, but at the time they kind of there was a little bit of a cult following. There was a little bit of, even though some of the Joes were overlooked, there was a lot of, it was nice because you could see that Hasbro was putting some energy into it.
Yeah. Something I don't think you see today. Classified sort of, but
yeah. No, now you do, but on and off over the years, it's been more clear than in other years.
Yeah.
Sometimes they seem to be phoning it in, but for the Real American Hero collection, there was a lot of limitations with the tooling they had available, but they would they were doing a pretty good job. Like the Cobras, they put most of them in the hierarchy guys. They got in there. The
Yeah,
major characters, they managed to get in there. Um, they gave them new paint schemes so they didn't look like the 1997 versions that had just been released as Toys R Us exclusives. But then there were some weird things like Laser Viper.
I was
It
just
was
gonna say that. I was just gonna say let's go to the
yeah,
2001
it was
series and talk about the Laser Viper. Was the first one I was gonna pick. It's funny you should say that because
it's sci-fi version 2
yeah,
in Cobra colors
yeah,
with this cool blue and red color scheme with a brand new, slightly awkward, oddly proportioned new head sculpt. But at the time, people were army building that because they had a blue helmet and a red mask, and people were using them as Cobra Troopers.
yeah. They worked
Um,
great as just a regular Cobra Trooper.
they, but if you wanted, I preferred that. Brian's a big fan of the 1990 Laser Viper. I'm a big non-fan. I find it a boring ass
You
figure.
know, I skipped that figure as a kid, and I can't figure out why. I love that.
I had it when I was a kid, and I wished that I had skipped it. If it wasn't for the cool gear, I would have hated that figure because I did hate that figure. But the
Some of the other ones from the
but I like the Laser
2001 that I,
Viper. They
yeah,
they took they reused. It was a redone Cobra Trooper that I felt. Oh well, now this makes more sense.
yeah, and some of the other Cobras that I was going to mention from the 2001 was one that we've already talked about, and that's the Fast Blast Viper. I remember finding out that was a thing when I got internet and when I started customizing. I'm like, ooh, that's a Heat Viper in really cool colors. It doesn't have the helmet that the V1 does, but
Which
even
made it all the better.
for him, for JD, I would have preferred it to have the helmet, but it's not a deal breaker. It's still a fantastic figure. Uh, Another one of the Cobras is the Shadow Viper, which is a repaint of the uh, Astro Viper, which really works really well. And one of my other favorites from this year is one of the vehicle drivers, and it's a repainted Sledge Viper in blue and silver, and it's called the Sub Viper.
Um, the Sub Viper was included with a repaint of the GI Joe Man of War.
Yes,
But it was in Cobra colors. No, excuse me, it was with the Wave Crusher, which
yes,
is the Shark, which is
sure,
a
yes.
garbage vehicle that was still a garbage vehicle that I bought in 2001 because I wanted the Sub Viper and I did not want the Shark, but then I had a Shark and I still hated it. The Lamprey that Brian had mentioned before, that was released the year before, that had the Man of War, but I liked that one. But what they did was the Lamprey and the Sub Viper were similarly colored, which gave an unprecedented uniformity to the Cobra nautical troopers.
I hadn't thought about that, but that's a good point.
It's
I'm pretty
not
sure I have
something,
that Lamprey, and I know I have that Sub Viper.
yeah, it's cohesive color schemes weren't always a thing in the vintage line.
No, they
The lampreys and the eels, their color schemes couldn't be any further apart. You don't know this when they're in the vehicle. We didn't care,
no,
they're all cool figures,
yes,
but it was a weird venture into giving a cohesive look, if not design to what I mean. And then the undertow had the same thing.
yes.
It was the same bright blue, but it had gray. It had a Cobra sigil. It bugged me because the Iron
Yeah,
Grenadiers
I can see
are a
that.
separate faction
Yeah,
for me, and I could never accept the undertow as Cobra Frogmen. I
agreed.
know why they did it because they didn't have the mold for the eel anymore, and they had the undertow. But yeah, I
It
couldn't. I
still could
just
have
I
put it.
couldn't.
Still could have put a Destro logo on it.
But at the time, they weren't doing the Iron Grenadiers anymore.
True.
Destro was back under the umbrella of Cobra.
Mm.
But it doesn't matter because again, they were all similarly. So if you were army building these to have like a Cobra C Force, you had a uniformity that Cobra had never had before.
That's a good point too, because I have that undertow as well. I didn't notice that like all three of those figures from that time period mesh very well together.
Um,
Because like I said, I've been specifically collecting specialty Vipers, so I went after the Sub Viper, and then anytime I come across like a really good deal on something that it's like, yeah, I want one of those because I never had it, or I had it and I want it again. I'll splurge and get it. So I'll pick and choose at random a lot of times, so I don't get these like JD mentioned to like fill out a Cobra.
Damn it, dude, pause it.
All right, so we were saying before JD's pop exploded on him there. Soda exploded on him. Sorry.
You used the right word the first time, then you had to go and try to get my hackles raised by using the wrong word on purpose. Damn you!
Yeah,
It's pop. You bake with soda, you don't drink it.
well, you drink soda. So like I was saying, it's like so some of these figures I picked up just as an aside. One of my I got a buddy here in the Springs that has a bunch of stuff that he's trying to sell, and every once in a while I'll find something in like something that he's trying to get rid of, and I'll take that. So I got them all kind of separately and didn't realize how coordinated the nautical forces from that time period are.
Um, I don't. I unfortunately don't have most of those now. I wish.
Uh-oh. Yeah, I got an internet glitch here. Hang on a sec. Pausing it.
All right, you were frozen too.
All right. So sorry about that. We had a little glitch there. JD's feed froze. So all right, we're back. So yeah, you don't have most of these, you were saying?
No, but I did at the time, and most of them were fairly cheap for a while, and they were really they were widely available at the time. The stores were ordering them, and you could get them. But even the ones that were cheap then, they're expensive now.
I'm
But
gonna say some of them are.
no, not insanely expensive.
Yeah, a lot of these are still extremely affordable. I'm gonna give you a for instance on one of them, and then I'm going to segue into the 2002, the very little that they did in 2002, to go completely to the opposite end of that spectrum. I got, and I was hoping it was going to be here before the show, and it isn't. I got the, God damn it, this upgrade. I'm going to buy the upgrade for the show for Zoom. Just not right now. God damn it. All right, there we go. Sorry. I got the version 5 low light, which is just a repaint of the 91 low light, pretty much complete for less than $15 shipped, because nobody knows what this that's selling it on eBay knows what this figure is. I mean, they know it's low light, but they don't know what year it is because it's still the 91 mold, and so it still has the 1991 stamp on it. So they look at the stamp instead of going and searching and realizing that this is not the 91 figure. It's actually the 2001 figure. And yeah, the Rock Vipers are fairly cheap. A lot of these figures are fairly cheap because a lot of these people don't know what these figures are.
No, some of them are expensive now because
we'll get into that. Yeah, go ahead and say what you were going to say.
Segue. Sometimes I've seen some of them are expensive because people don't realize, because it's lost on them that these are sort of mid-range, kind of obscure. We're at a point where people are selling, they're overcharging for things because it says G.I. Joe on it.
Yeah.
But, and I've seen the 2-pack of Crossfire and Double Blast listed for like $50. I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm like, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But they were fairly widely available at the time. And I was glad because sometimes I was getting them and mixing the parts around. If there was a parts recipe that bugged me, like I didn't like that Leatherneck used the same torso as Duke 2 series later,
Yeah.
I changed it. Um, but and I painted it to match. But I liked I liked seeing all those new characters. Most of them have been forgotten about since. But
And I wanted to segue into the expensive end, and those were the 2002 figures, um, which I have pulled up here because I wanted to make sure I hit them. And there was 3, 6, 7. So wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So there were 4 2-packs out that came out that year. And as JD mentioned, those were internet exclusives. And one in particular that I had to track down was the version 1 Shock Viper, which is a repaint of the Ice Cream Trooper, is insanely expensive, not because it's the first version of that particular figure or a repaint of the Ice Cream Trooper. It's because he came with a very cool repaint of Serpentor, and it was internet exclusive. So JD was saying these were widely available. The 2002 figures were not widely
no,
available,
because
and that Serpentor goes for insane, stupid money, and by default, makes that Shock Viper really hard to get a hold of. I did eventually get a hold of one. I didn't pay as much as I was prepared to, so I'm happy about that. One of the other figures that came out that year is the version 4 Shipwreck, which is a repaint of the 91 Shipwreck.
94.
Sorry, 94 Shipwreck. Um, and I love that figure. I don't have that. I don't have any of those versions of Shipwreck, but it is my favorite version of Shipwreck.
The big box stores, Target, Toys R Us, Walmart, they didn't buy that wave because Joe versus Cobra was right around the corner. So they were all ordering those. That last series of Real American Hero Collection almost didn't happen. But since some of the online retailers were willing to carry it and get it in some kind of numbers, it made it worth it for Hasbro to spend the money to get them run because they were already ready. The decos were decided on. The Battle Core repaints like Sidetrack, he's a new head, but he was a Battle Core Stalker. He includes all of Battle Core Stalker's gear. Shipwreck includes all of his 94 gear.
Yeah.
They were ready to go. They almost didn't go because the big box stores were like, eh. But the internet stores like smalljoes.com and I think Toy Wiz at the time, and
I don't
they
remember
were,
who else was carrying that. I remember
yeah, but
seeing who did carry it, and I forgot.
yeah, Entertainment Earth had them.
Yeah.
But they were buying them, so they made it worth it. There was the Crimson Twins.
Yes.
They
That was
weren't
a lot of flying.
drastically different from the originals, but they were noticeably different. The
Kind of
blue was
muted
darker.
colors.
They were a little more subtle. Um, Lifeline from 1994 got a repaint
Yeah.
with a new head, with without the helmet,
And like a
and he had a 5 o'clock shadow
Yeah.
painted on his face. Interestingly, that Lifeline is not Edwin Steen, it's Greg Scott. He was named, he has the same file name as the character. If you go all the way back to the Star Brigade Armor Tech, Robo Joe, his file name was Greg Scott. So effectively, what they did was they gave us this Lifeline figure that's basically Robo Joe before his accident.
Right.
It was not an accident. So technically it's Lifeline and it's a repaint of Edwin Steen, but it's not. And I love geeky details like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't know that. So
that
one because I did not.
This is why you have me on the show.
Exactly. This is why we're doing the why I'm having him on as having JD as the guest for the Alley Viper show because he's probably knows more about him than I do.
Um, he was included in a set with a new medic named Sideswipe. I used to joke that maybe he was the ambulance driver with a name like Sideswipe,
That's what I my
but
first thought too.
um, I he was the repaint of Stretcher with the new head, and there was some criticism at the time, but that's because the character is named Andrew Franco. Andrew Franco was a Hasbro employee. He was on the GI Joe team at the time. It was a tribute to him, so they made him a new character. Um, but yeah, because who was Shipwreck? Oh, he was in the set with Sidetrack, which was an awkwardly reused name from 2 years before that. But he was named, but it was a different character than the first Sidetrack, who was Sean McLaughlin. Well, this was John Boyce, another Hasbro employee that they were paying tribute to. But it was a short run series, and even the Joes, they go for stupid money now.
Yeah,
Not as much as Serpentor and that
no,
Shock Viper.
yeah, that's that shot, and that Serpentor is really nice. I
I
love
love that fit. When I got it in hand at the time, way back then, I was like, this is like Serpentor, but he's all stealth mission
right.
Serpentor.
Yeah, no, I
Um,
really dig the figure, and yeah, I am happy to have that Shock Viper in my collection. That was definitely one of the harder
at the
figures for
time,
me to track down.
the Shock Viper was released with Serpentor, there was some people online that were like, why is this new mold in here? Because the new colors threw people off
Yeah,
because it was so different from the Ice Cream Soldier that had been neon
yeah,
yellow and neon orange
that's
94 that people
hang on a
just
sec. Hang on. We're going to run
yeah,
out of time in about 30 seconds. All right. So you were saying about the Shock Viper being a repaint?
yeah, it was
While we were paused, I went and grabbed mine. So there is the version 1 Shock Viper.
yeah, I mean the colors are similar to the Laser Viper. They're
Yeah.
not exact, but they're closer. They're a little more dull. He's got the same paint wash on him.
Yep.
But blue, red, brand new Cobra Trooper class.
Yeah.
But a lot of time, there was a lot of talk, chatter at the time, or where this mold come from, and then people realized, well, there were some people that are like, it's just the Ice Cream Soldier,
Yeah.
but it's proof that a good color scheme can change, can completely change a previously used mold
And
for being
I say that all the time uh, in my customizing tutorials about painting because a lot of the figures that I use, I mean, Joe's, like we've talked about in the last few minutes, about how expensive GI Joe stuff is these days because it just says GI Joe on it. So people think they can charge a premium for it. I don't use GI Joe parts for my customs very much anymore. I use Marauder Task Force stuff for 90% of my customs or what I have on hand. But if I got to buy new stuff, it's most of the time Marauder Task Force. So it is the same buck over and over and over and over again. But with a decent paint job, you can't tell.
doesn't matter. Um, you know, the Ice Cream Soldier was a joke of a figure in '94. Even at the time, unless you read his file card, people mistook it as a Cobra because it looks like a Cobra. It's covered from head to toe, which is a um, standard type of setup for a Cobra Trooper. You didn't see a lot of Joes that were covered head to toe without some of their gear coming off to show some kind of a face.
That's a good point. I hadn't thought of that.
I mean, Blowtorch, Barbecue was one of the few, but you knew from the cartoon that he was a dude. The helmet was just part of his head sculpt. But Blowtorch,
I'd
Blast
removable.
Off, uh, those kind of characters, once you pulled their, then it was, but the Ice Cream Soldier didn't have a removable helmet.
No.
So, but it's a guy. It's a simple. He's a Joe, and he's an individual. But even at the time, people were, if they were troop building Cobras still, he fit right in with them because he's loud colors. But again, he's got no identity. So even then, people were mistaking him for a Cobra, or there were people that were. Because I remember seeing in some of the toy magazines that there were people that were buying Ice Cream Soldiers and stuff. Like they would write letters. And they're like, he's cheap, so I'm using him as a Cobra because it doesn't make any sense as a joke. Plus, the code name's stupid. Ice
It
Cream
really
Soldier.
is.
It's a joke on his file card.
Yeah.
But the Shock Viper came along and it's just the same, but they changed it. It was now a Cobra Trooper, and suddenly people really liked the Shock Viper. And then when they repainted it, 2 years later, the Shock Viper version 2 in this really dark red
I should have brought
and
that
like
one too, but,
like this bronze color.
Yeah. I can get that real quick.
And then it gave it a paint wash. Again, people were like, holy shit, the Shock Viper's awesome. This mold is great. It's too bad that it started out as that Dayglow orange figure from '94. But, and that was included in a 2-pack with, I think, a non-O-ring heavy duty.
Yeah, I don't remember who the. Here's the second Shock Viper.
Yeah, I mean, again,
and it's a fantastic sculpt, man. I love it.
Yeah, and it's a good sculpt in neon orange with yellow highlights too. It's just hard to see that there's a Joe in there.
Yeah. And to be honest, I thought it was, when I was one of the posts, so I'm migrating all of my Go Figure Facebook page to my personal Facebook page, which is just going to be Go Figure from now on because I'm sick of fucking social media being such a downer. But I'm talking about I'm kind of talking about everything that went into those customs as I was making them, and I forgot where I was going with that. Goddamn, completely had a brain fart there. Anyway,
I don't know. I can't even guess. But yeah. So really, the 2002 Real American Hero Collection could have just as easily not happened because it almost didn't. But I was glad at the time that it did because, again, there's new characters. And yeah, Brian mentioned that Shipwreck.
I was using the internet finding out about figures that didn't know exist because the internet was not a thing, and I missed a lot of these figures. And the first time I saw Ice Cream Soldier, I too thought he was a Cobra. That's where I was going with that.
It was in 1996. In 1994, we were in the process of moving from Montana to Georgia, and I missed a couple of months worth of releases. And so a lot of the 1994 stuff, they didn't have it at the PX. Some of it they did, but they didn't have all of it. I remember seeing a lot of the Star Brigade stuff, but not a lot of the Battle Corps stuff. And in 1996, while I was in high school, we were up here on vacation from Fort Benning, Georgia. We were up here visiting the family in Western New York, and there was a junk store. It might as well have been a junk store. It wasn't a junk store. It was a legitimate. It was like Ollie's is now, or one of those stores that has like older merchandise that have been closed out from other stores. Well, there was a chain of stores called Odds and Ends here. Well, in 1996, they had a bunch of runoff 1994 figures in mass. Like there was a bin full of these 1994 figures. And I got the Ice Cream Soldier, I got Lifeline, and I got one of the Star Brigade figures. I want to say I think it was Payload. The blue and black one. That was the first time I'd seen the Ice Cream Soldier, and I couldn't get past the name at the time, but I liked that Lifeline. But the Ice Cream Soldier, I had read the file card, but I couldn't see any him with a Cobra, and he kept being. I had him as the Cobra that kept trying to stop Lifeline from rescuing whoever it was that he was supposed to be going out to.
All
I
right.
remember just being happy that Lifeline figure was not version 1, because version 1, Lifeline was ruined for me by the Sunbow cartoon, utterly ruined. That Sunbow cartoon destroyed that character for me. But I remember in 96 when I got the 94 figure thinking, wait, Lifeline's cool now. So he had a new lease on life. It was salvaged by that figure.
Gotcha.
But I like seeing that repaint that we got later, and I like the
Mhm.
you know
That
the
yeah.
five. Yeah, I mean they had a lot of character, but I'm glad those characters came out. I wish I had them now. I think the only one I have now is Sideswipe, and I bought him off eBay a couple years ago.
Well, and weren't you working on a customizing project where you were going back and you were making modern customs of all those figures?
Yes, and I got about half of them done before my creative energy switched to something else.
Yeah,
So
I will not
I
give you shit for that because I've definitely been there on numerous
I
projects that have not gone.
yeah, I have a modern format of Double Blast, and Surefire, and uh Whiteout.
I was gonna say, I
Um
thought you done like 6 of them.
yeah, I'm trying to remember. Oh yeah, because I did a side swipe too. Um I kept trying to do Crossfire, but I kept deciding on different parts and never finished it.
I don't
But
think I've done any customs from that time period at all.
so far, the only classified scale one I've got is Chameleon. Yes, it is the Snake Eyes Origins Baroness, but I like the character of Chameleon. When she came out in 2000, she was like Brian mentioned, she was a nice repaint of the Baroness
Oh yeah, it's a
figure.
fantastic looking figure. I like it more than the version 1 Baroness. If
Yeah,
I was gonna, and see, that was one of the things I was gonna mention. JD would has really gone on and on to expound on how these are new characters, and that is a fantastic thing. But they didn't have to be either. They could be
no,
new versions of your favorite characters, and I think that is one of the things that I really like about this line is this can be two different things at the same time
yeah,
depending on what you want, and I think that is fantastic in a toy line. This can
a
either be
lot,
a new character for you or this can be a new version of one of your favorite
yeah,
characters.
a
And
lot of people,
I would go both ways on that because the shipwreck would still be shipwreck, but the chameleon would be a very updated an updated version of the Baroness, and that's one of the things that I love about this particular line is its ability to diversify based on what you want.
yeah, I as a member of the online Joe community back in 2000, there were a lot of people that just bought it and used it as the Baroness. There were a few of us that liked the Chameleon character. They did not have the trademark for the Baroness as a name, but they could have just as easily just called her something else and just said she's the Baroness with a new name. Instead, they went to the trouble of saying that she was the illegitimate half sister of the Baroness who was filling in as a double because the Baroness went missing. So she was a member of the Joe team that was spying within Cobra. and feeding them intel. But I was always struck by the idea that she was the illegitimate half sister of the Baroness. I'm like, damn. Yes, that's my child just said that is specific. And that was my thought at the time was I was like, it is a really character. That is a really specific character description.
Right?
Somebody put some imagination into
Yeah.
that. And I was like, at the time, I was imagining that figure outside of her Baroness disguise probably looked like one of the MTV VJs at the time. Like she probably had um pseudo punk clothes on, but she was probably angry at the world because the world saw her, or the people who knew her saw her as the illegitimate half sister of the daughter of the aristocracy in some nameless European country. And I liked the idea that she would have joined the Joes out of spite. And when the Baroness went missing,
It was kind of a precursor to the Stahl family.
it was. And I like that. I like that character detail.
Oh, I
So
love
I
it.
like the idea that when a Baroness comes along, like a movie version, that I can't. This is chameleon for me because the Baroness that we got in the classified line is so great, but this figure on its own, and I
It
like
works.
the portrayal
No, yeah, it
that,
works. I didn't think of
well,
that, but yeah, no, that absolutely works using the movie Baroness for Chameleon. I
yeah,
didn't think
she
of that.
is,
It fucking works because it
yeah,
doesn't. It looks. It's different enough that it can be a completely different person.
yeah, and so
Don't you? Didn't you just get a Chameleon not too long ago?
the original figure, yeah,
Yeah, I thought.
um, and that's the third time now I've owned the chameleon figure.
Don't worry.
But the now I did a couple of things that little whatever that tech gadget is that all the early classified Joes had on. I glued that to her arm. It's off one of the spare Lady J's I have because I want all my Joes to have that little tech
Ah,
gear.
okay.
Uh, Lenny Panzica, who's running the GI Joe brand, is he calls it the Joe Pro. It's like a
Okay.
GPS communicator thing, but I added that to her and I gave her a hip holster. I don't have I can't find the pistol I was going to put in that holster, but so I'm using her alongside the rest of my
There you have it,
classified
folks.
Joes.
Even as an adult, he's still losing the accessories.
Shut up. Yes. Um, yes. Laugh it up, child of mine. Um, I, but I like, and I want some more of those new characters in my classified. I'll get there at some point, but
The Shock
yeah, she's a,
Viper is on my customizing list to do male and female version of a Shock Viper. I just haven't found the parts for it yet.
But yeah, you know what? I'm glad we finally talked about these. I'm glad you had the idea that because I don't know, they just got lost in the shuffle, which is indicative of the Braille American Hero Collection's place in GI Joe collecting history.
It's
Is
kind of funny because
even like guys like me that are fans of that, I overlooked it too.
I know I number one, I don't know how we missed it the first time we went through this, and I've been focused on this particular area specifically because I've been hunting a lot of these figures, and unfortunately didn't the mail still hasn't arrived because I was going to open a package from JD on the show today because we're doing a team up custom. He's building it and I'm painting it. It's kind of like Law and Order. He drives the car. I find the bombs. We tried it the other way, but it doesn't work. So
Yeah. I
it's, one of the figure I'm working on for JD is I'm making he made it. I'm painting it. I'm painting up his version of the 1991 Lowlight. And one of the things that I always do when I do customs is I do a lot of like research. So I find all the images that I can of that particular figure. I find all of the customs that I can of that particular figure, and I find all of the art that I can from that particular figure. And I try and pick out the best parts from all of those for my custom. Number one, so I don't repeat, I try not to repeat something that somebody else has done, um, or get an idea from somebody something else has done, because I've done that too. And while looking at the 91 low light, I'm like, you know what? I had this figure when I was a kid. I don't have it now. I want one. So I got on eBay and started looking for an affordable 91 low light, and noticed that, wow, that's not the color scheme of the 91 low light. And it's the 2001 version. And I'm like, I didn't even know that existed, honestly.
Yeah,
And so I picked up one of those too. So
that's where he became the urban sniper. For yeah, he's in blue
yeah,
and
it's a very,
gray and black, and he's cool. He's an
yeah,
awesome repaint. I
that's
have
what I
that,
thought.
and I
I'm
have
like, and I had to have it. I'm like, this is a fucking awesome figure. So I've been focused a lot recently on this particular line. And again, like I said, I'm I'm actively looking for parts to do a Shock Viper custom, both male and female versions of them. Um, I thought about using a Halo figure for the male version, but I'm not set on that because it's pretty, anything like that's very iconic.
yeah.
Iconic
I
parts, even with decent paint, is kind of
still
hard to hide.
I I have a couple of Halo figures that I bought for customs, and that's what I kept running into, no matter what, because all the Halo figures have all been repainted by the toy company. I'm like, they're Halo parts. You can tell they're what are they? Colonial? No, they're not Colonial Marines. What are they?
I don't know, Marines of some flavor.
Yeah,
I've
but
got one sitting here, and
yeah,
I thought
what
about,
Master Chief?
yeah,
Yeah, I
and I
mean,
thought
no,
about, I'm like, yeah, it's with some accessories, it might work pretty well. I'd have to change out the head for sure. I may still go that route. I don't know. I haven't decided, but then again, I thought I might do like an ice cream soldier with one of these too, just for shits and giggles.
all right. I'm highly encouraging an ice cream soldier. Um, but I'm
But I need a separate head. So, and then again, I still want to do a female version because that's my thing, is female specialty vipers. And I'm looking at maybe Fortnite figures. Unfortunately, I think the one that I want to use has been out for a long time and is not readily available.
um yeah,
Because there's not a lot of armored female figures out there. So I mean, it's either that or maybe a Joy Toy figure, and I'm kind of holding off on that because I just use a Joy Toy figure for my female Astro Viper.
well done by the way.
Oh man, thank you.
Um
That was I am really happy with that. It looks beautiful on the card, man. It looks spectacular.
yeah, well, it looks spectacular off the card too. I um yeah, it's got me thinking about that Shadow Viper from 2001.
I have that
I
one.
never liked the file card on those guys because they made
Oh,
them sound like the Night Creepers without being the Night Creepers.
oh yeah, because they were kind of like technology. Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, they were
Like,
Night Creepers were techno ninjas, and these guys were techno troopers without the ninja part, but they were pretty badly written file cards. It was a badly written file card, and they included all the gear from the Astro Viper.
yes.
So it wasn't an Astro Viper, but it was an Astro Viper.
Mhm.
And it makes me think that if you ever do like a Shadow Viper, I'll be interested to see if you how you separate it from being an Astro Viper because
I would
it
just
should
make it a specialized Astro Viper, honestly.
right. But I mean, I feel like that's what the Shadow Viper should have been in the first place. It should have, but
Just a stealth Astro
yeah,
Viper.
like even if they couldn't have named it Astro Viper, well, who cares? Just make it an Astro Viper, give it a different name, but like they did with the Rock Viper. But
Right?
but
Yeah, they could have
anyways,
called it Star Viper.
Yeah, or Shadow Astro Viper. Um, I don't care if it's a mountain. That's fine. It's not a Shadow Viper because it's an Astro Viper.
Did you bring your
But
toy downstairs? Good girl.
hi, Alice.
Brought her own toy down to play downstairs. So
Uh, but anyways, uh, yeah, we gotta end this.
yeah, no
But
worries. The only thing that I was going to say before we wrap it up, and I'm not going to completely reveal the surprises, we put out an invitation for a guest, a celebrity guest. That's all I'm going to say at this point in time. But fingers crossed. Hoping to hear back in the next couple of days on a yay or nay on possibly a celebrity guest for General Geekery.
and
So,
if not, well, we tried. But
and I'll try again because I'll run into him again. So,
but yeah, thanks for listening if you are still listening to this. And we'll be back shortly.
yeah, and as always, thanks for watching. Please do all that fun social media stuff, like, share, subscribe, comment below. Let us know what your favorite figures from the A Real American Hero collection are in the comments below and why. And I do try and answer all of the comments and that get put up. I don't always get to them right away, but I do try and answer them. And JD often answers comments for me too. And then stay tuned for our upcoming episode of we don't really have like a catchy name for it yet. Give me some time on that. But we're going to do a show specifically dedicated to the Alley Viper since I just finished that part of my collection. And I have every version of it. There's like 20 of them, where we're going to go over all the way from version 1 to the San Diego Comic-Con Alley Viper Commander and everything in between. And it's I think it's one of the cool things about that particular figure is it spans the entire line of GI Joe, from A Real American Hero old school O-rings to the Pursuit of Cobra modern sculpt. So I think there's a lot to talk about, and I think it'll be an interesting show. So um, with that, as always, thanks for watching and stay tuned for more.